Hello and welcome to the Adam Hazara Show from my own bedroom in Burke, Virginia. This is episode 4. Thank you so much to everyone tuning in today on this Thursday night, chilly up here in Burke, Virginia on December 5th, 2024. We're going live at just approximately 6:31 p.m. Of course, just before the show begins, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, make sure you share with your friends, and if any mailbag questions can be put out in a chat. Tag the show on X at Adam Hazara Show. The A in Adam, the H in Zara, and then the S in Show are all uppercase letters. Keep that in mind. Or you can email the show at the Adam Hazara Show at gmail.com, all lowercase, with your question. So thank you guys for tuning in. Just keep in mind as well, I do have a bit of a cold today. I have been recovering from it from the last few days, but good news for you guys. I am doing a lot better. I'm thankfully feeling well enough to be bringing you guys this show today. So without further ado, let's get started. So on today's show, we will be reviewing Lake Braddock football's regional finals win over Fairfax that happened last Saturday. Congratulations to the Lake Braddock Bruins football team for winning the region title for a second year in a row, as well as winning their 5th regional title in school history. Second time they've done it back-to-back years. Their first time was when they did it in the 2009 and 2010 seasons. So again, another great year for a great Lake Braddock football program. With that, let's jump to our player of the game I chose for regional finals. I think this is one probably in everyone's board. He's mine too. Peyton Holmes, the running back for Lake Braddock, little speedster junior, coming out of the gate right in that second half. Big part of that Bruins offense, leading to that 40-25 win over the Lions with 3 touchdowns and 92 yards on the ground. What an amazing performance by Holmes, being a big end zone threat late in that game. You certainly look up that pace as it continues versus Madison as they go into the state semifinals. Of course, on Saturday, that game will be at Madison with a 2 p.m. start time. We'll be at the game. We'll be watching the Bruins to go to that regional finals, or not for regional finals, to go over state finals for the second time in school history. Of course, the first time was back in 2009 when they lost to Thomas Dale at UVA. So congratulations again to Peyton Holmes on a player of the game. Of course, for a final shout out before we kind of get into the Fairfax game review and takeaways, we have Trent Payne, of course, the Bruins' star defensive lineman, who has set many records this season. Of course, the single season sack record, the single season TFL's record. I mean, that guy is just a monster. He does it all in the Bruins D-line. Probably their best interior D lineman in their history, if you guys didn't know. He just received an offer from UVA Wise. So congratulations to Trent as he's getting a little bit more notice as we get to the end of the senior season, which will be either 1 or 2 more games. So again, huge congrats over there to Trent Payne. So some takeaways, of course, were that the Bruins did win 40-25. Pretty amazing as well. The Bruins, were able to actually do something that no team was able to do. And that's winning 3 games in 9 days. Of course, in the other regions, everyone was playing on the same schedule with a full 7 days rest. Fairfax is actually coming into that game with more rest because, of course, they had that game canceled with Hayfield after they forfeited in the regional playoffs. So I believe Fairfax got a good 7+ day rest there. And, very impressive what the Bruins were able to do. Again, not something you see a lot of teams do. They did a good job, rotating their starters in and out at times. Even if it seemed like that they were tired at times, they were still able to do well enough in games. Bruins did a good job limiting them in practices and maintaining enough stamina in a 9-day span. And of course, with the limiting of practice, the Bruins were also able to do well enough to limit them to a point where that they wouldn't perform well and that they still would. Well, again, that's another great thing that Coach Doc does. I'm pretty sure he'll probably get the Regional Coach of the Year award, which should be announced in the next few days or so. So be on the lookout for that. And, let's get into something else. Ty Jackson for Bruins. All of a sudden, he's a starter in the regional finals game. Who saw that coming? We are all assuming maybe it's going to be Cerise because, again, we talk about how much he's led the Bruins to the state tournament last year and how successful the Bruins were as him being their signal caller. And then Ty Jackson just comes out here in the regional finals, getting his first start since week 5, which is when he got injured with his, I think he torn meniscus. And then he comes back versus that same Fairfax team, and he's healthy the full game, did really well. 142 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns thrown to Kai Austin, the Bruins' William & Mary committed receiver, and then went 11 for 14 in pass attempts. So, a big statement game for Ty Jackson. Of course, that practice he'd been getting, once the Bruins were kind of up a bit in those playoff games versus Mount Vernon and West Springfield before, has helped him out immensely, it seems like. And there he is, just going out there, Coach Doc seeing that, the Bruins, it proves the Bruins probably were just not messing around. We kind of mentioned, how Lake Braddock has Jackson and Cerise, the 2 quarterbacks and the 2 quarterback system. Now it seems like Coach Doc has kind of thrown that in a trash bin, and now he's just sticking kind of one guy now. And so it seems like, so that's what he said in an interview the other day. And now Jackson is kind of a guy, again, we've mentioned it before, and I'll keep preaching it until the cows come home, is that he's a guy who has that bullet arm in the air. I mean, no one has a better deep ball arm, and it's in its power and accuracy. No one does it better than him, it seems like, for the Bruins. And so that seemed like something that was, of course, really going for him as well. That's going to obviously be a big factor for the Madison game on Saturday. Of course, we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. So, Coach Doc also, showing that, he's looking to take risk, even if, he's going to start Ty Jackson in a high-pressure situation, of course, being in, a game with regional finals. Everything is at stake. It is a must-win, if you want to go to the state tournament for the second straight year. And he did just that. And again, Coach Doc is just a guy who overall just never seems to shy away from looking to take the biggest chances. Of course, he's always making a lot of interesting trick moves, going for like a lot of fake field goals, faking extra points, going for early onside kicks. I mean, you name it. Coach Doc goes for it all. Now, a lot of times it hasn't worked out in his favor, but again, still, he's Coach Doc has the guts to do that. And he, of course, again, putting a big player in a spot like this, and he trusts Ty Jackson to handle the big moment, and he sure as well did for the entirety of that game. Especially like one in the region finals, and taking out a guy like Cerise, again, a guy who led the Bruins to a state tournament last year, bench him, and then give Ty Jackson the chance to start. Sometimes it just takes moves, like that to propel you to wins, and also showed, Bruins are not taking risk, and, the Bruins showed on offense that they wanted to make a statement early, getting the receivers like Kai Austin, we mentioned, Robert Holling, Zach Hibner, how great they've been. He wants to utilize them to their full potential with Ty Jackson's deep arm. You do that well, they can really get down the field well, as all 3 of them have great speed with great height as well. Very tough for a lot of secondaries to defend and just entire defenses. So that's what Coach Doc was showing there. You talk about, the Bruins defensively too. It was great again. 5 TFLs, 10 tackles, sack for Trent Payne, of course, who got that offer from UVA Wise. Xavier Main with a career game as well, 21 tackles in a TFL. Probably his highest tackle total he's had in a game. Been quite a while since I think the Bruins have had anyone with 20 or more tackles in a single contest. So congrats again to the X-Man for getting that many tackles. And then, of course, a big step up as well from the linebackers as well. Matt Holcomb, who had a pick, had some really good tackles. You have Cody Blaylock, Jack Putsednik, who did really well. Big game, again, from a secondary, a second game in a row where they've had 3 interceptions. Elijah Oladipo had a pick. Hamlin Gallant had a pick. He has 5 picks on a year. Talk about what a guy he's been at Bruins backcourt this year. Matthew Holcomb, of course, we said a linebacker had one as well. Now he does kind of think he is kind of a safety hybrid as well. So he kind of has some nice versatility there, playing in the secondary as well. Going with his linebacker game. Seems like also that secondary is peaking at their best time. Of course, we talked about, at the beginning of the season where the Bruins were bringing all new secondary. Lost a lot of good guys there like Ken Fatui, Jacob Weiss, Jack Rubino. I mean, those were really good guys for Bruins on defense in the secondary last year. And you got some new guys coming in this year like Hamlin Gallant. You got Xander Quadros, Khalid Cash, Walker Mitchell. And now speaking of Khalid Cash, unfortunately, he did get hurt. Of course, he was first team All-District this year, but it seems like he is out for a season. He underwent wrist surgery recently. I know Coach Doc made a tweet about that today, posted a picture of Cash after he got surgery. Of course, that will affect him playing basketball too. Of course, he also does play on the Lake Braddock varsity boys basketball team. So it looks like he's probably not going to be back there for a while either, but certainly, a sad ending for Khalid Cash and this Bruins team. Of course, one of their best guys in the secondary this year, but of course, we wish him the safest and best recovery here from the Adam Hazara Show. But overall, still, even without Cash, the Bruins defense still did a really nice job in that secondary. Of course, with all his picks, we've all seen better coverage on some receivers as well in that game as well, and other games lately. So that's everything mentioned. The Bruins overall through the game, defensively, they did struggle at times. Now we kind of do have to mention, of course, offensively they were great. They scored 40 points, and they still did that again with only coming in on 3 full days of rest and the 3 games in 9 days. Of course, we mentioned that they were still very good in keeping their stamina and being durable enough to last through the entire game. Again, the Bruins, something that they've kind of had some inconsistencies with this season is the run stopping. The Bruins really struggled with keeping Harry Maltese, who's the running back for the Lions at that time of the game. Now, of course, to talk about Fairfax, kind of has that triple running back trio of Maltese and then Moman. You have Ethan Lynch as well. Now Lynch and Moman are out due to injury. Moman's out for a season. He was actually co-offensive district player of the year with Mark Anthony White over at West Springfield. And then Bruins also face Maltese, but Maltese is also still a really good running back, really good bruiser back, got a lot of yards on the ground, can rip through the gut. So that's someone who a lot of teams have had trouble with this year. Of course, the Bruins now, give credit to where it's due. Might have been a place where the Bruins were tired due to lack of rest, of course, with those 3 games in 9 days and still being driven hard on defense, where they were probably showing signs of fatigue at a lot of times, and the Lions were constantly pushing the ball on the ground. And with Maltese, who's really tough to take down, it's going to take more stamina. To take down a guy like him, who, of course, is a bruiser back. And so Bruins still kind of struggle with, so you could say that. But again, this is something we've been seeing a lot over this year, is that the Bruins have not been able to really stop a run. Now, you can't, they're facing really good running backs. You'll say it's like, Mark Anthony White over at West Springfield, Steve Peroma at South County, say Kennedy Duda at Westfield, Dominic Nicely over at Madison, who the Bruins are playing Saturday. Now, he's a bit different, and I'll explain why later in the show, but some of those other names I mentioned that are not named Nicely, the Bruins have had struggle stopping them. And of course, against big opponents, it can never be the excuse that, they're too good for us, especially if you're trying to do a district. And, if you prove you can keep up with them, you got to stop them. So I think that's something the Bruins still have to come down and improve on, is, of course, the run stopping has been a bit, of course, like I said, it's been hit or miss this year. it was like that a lot last game. And, even, if they were injured outside a lot of games this season, it's not been there. Even if you have guys in the defensive line like Trent Payne and Brown Callanan, even if you have Xavier Maine over at linebacker and also other solid pieces on that Bruins defense, in other positions, it still has not been there a lot of times. That's really going to be a problem for, of course, against Madison, who, of course, is a very run-heavy team with Dominic Nicely, of course. And, you can't have any excuses against those other teams who, have as good players. Oh, they were too good. You can't have it doing that especially if you're going to win, you're good enough and that you have proven you're good enough. So kind of now preview Madison. So, of course, this is actually a Bruins team that they've faced back in week 2. Now, Lake Braddock lost that game 36-15. Madison was really coming away that game. They led from a start, and they never turned back. Nicely had a really good game. Running back, receiver, the quarterback, Hill Yates, who's always really good to watch. He was great there as well. And so the Bruins had a lot of trouble containing those two. This is a Madison team again that is coming off a 48-21 win over Washington Liberty in the Northern Region Finals. The 5th straight regional title for the Warhawks. Pretty impressive. And now they're kind of seem to be the ones who are dominating that Northern region. Of course, it would have been Westfield for years, but Westfield has kind of taken a backseat to this Madison team that all of a sudden, a lot of people want to say that Madison has had this really strong program over the course of many, many years. And, that, it probably gives you a lot of people the perception that they've been trying to compete for in a lot of state tournaments over years. But here's the thing, actually. Madison, actually, they weren't like really, really good. They weren't like on a level of state contender until maybe about 2020. Kind of before that, you talk about them in the 2010s. They didn't even make a state playoff appearance. Maybe made 1, maybe 2 regional final appearances here and there. But it was always Westfield who was up there. Of course, Kyle Simmons always leading the charge of those teams. And a lot of people always seem to be confused by that, Madison and Westfield are always the top dogs in that region. But again, it was always more so Westfield. Madison was in the backseat at the time. Now it's kind of the other way around where Westfield is in the backseat. And now Madison is all of a sudden winning all these regional titles. Just want to point that out there. And now Madison is competing for a state title every year. They've even appeared in a couple now in the scores and, in those games against Oscar Smith and Freedom Woodbridge, in the last few years, in the games that they have been in the state finals. They haven't really played the closest with them. I think they've gotten blown out by 30 points or so in both games, but still pretty impressive for them to make it all the way to that point, even coming from the weaker side of the bracket, which is, of course, the Nova side. It seems like it's back to the same format this year where, the Fairfax County teams face one another, / Arlington or of Alexandria City. And then you kind of seem to have the Prince William / Stafford teams facing the 804 or the 757 teams around a beach area, such as Oscar Smith or Highland Springs in the 804. Oscar Smith is in the 757. So you seem to have that. So the Bruins will be looking to face Madison on Saturday. An advantage, I think, for Lake Braddock is, of course, they have faced this Madison team before, of course, in week 2. They know what to expect, of course, nicely. They expect a really good defense, too. That's led by guys like Jackson Ambrose and Caden Green on defensive line. You have Henry Maiden. You have TJ George in the secondary who can really do damage to you if you're not careful with keeping your secondary in check. And then you have guys to do with like that. And, again, this is a game where, we talk about Ty Jackson, how great he's been, with his deep ball. He actually was kind of doing that against Madison last time. He actually came in, later in that Madison game after Cerise really struggled. And he threw a couple of touchdowns as Cerise was the starter. He looked very sharp, being able to put a couple dents and what's one of the best defenses in the area. And so, I think, another thing that goes into this move by Coach Doc, starting Jackson over Cerise, is so that he can get him prepared for that Madison game too. I think there is a little bit of thinking ahead here to what the Bruins are going to face. I know Coach Doc preaches a lot about, we're trying to win today, really trying to win today. We don't focus on tomorrow. We don't focus on what's going on a week from now. But I really think this is a move here where Coach Doc is thinking a little bit ahead and saying, look, we're probably going to have to face this versus Madison. We know, Cerise is a great quarterback, but, Ty Jackson with his deep ball arm is probably going to give us the best chances to score against some of those really tough teams we're going to face with those really tough defenses, like that dark side defense that the Madison Warhawks carry. This is also, Jackson, who's been a main, he's a main difference maker of his arm. And he's already proven against some tough teams. Of course, we mentioned Fairfax last week, mentioned against Madison earlier in the season. I mean, he even threw a touchdown versus Highland Springs last year, albeit it was late in the game. Bruins were already out of it. It was in the fourth quarter. So Ty Jackson threw a touchdown to one of the best defenses in the whole state last year. We probably had quite a few FBS guys on it. So Jackson was able to do that and put a dent in the Springers defense there. And even with how dominant, Lake Braddock's offense been at times, and, how clutch they have come, you can't shy away from this Madison defense because, they will hurt you, of course. They make a lot of picks. They make a lot of really tough plays on you. They execute things really well. And, of course, for the Bruins defense, so that's going to be a challenge for Jackson a little bit. But it seems like, he's seen this Madison team before. He can adapt really well. That's one advantage, of course, the Bruins have again. Even with how dominant, of course, the defense is, you're going to be facing, a Madison defense that also, an offense, I should say, that also has, of course, Dominic Nicely, an FBS level running back, arguably the most dangerous player to face this year, probably offensively, or maybe even overall. Maybe Hunter Malky over at South County, because he's an FBS guy over committed at Old Dominion. But I know Dominic Nicely, he was originally committed to Coastal Carolina, but then he decommitted, and now he's kind of still weighing his options of where he wants to commit. I know he has some FBS offers from, I believe, UConn, Boston College, JMU, South Florida, just to name a few. But still, I mean, if you're getting FBS, that's the highest level of football you can get to. So he's going to be very dangerous. And, we mentioned the Bruins again with their run stopping struggles, even with guys like Payne, Cownan, are they tough enough to be a Power 5 guy like Nicely, just not those two, but for just the whole defensive unit as a whole, are they talented enough? Because, they couldn't stop guys who are not as good as Nicely, like Mark Empty White over West Springfield, Henry Maltese over at Fairfax, even in week 5, I think they had some troubles with him. Steve Coroma over at South County, we mentioned Kenny Duda over at Westfield again. They still had some problems against them. They still get a lot of holes. They go right up the middle and are always getting very significant yardage out of that. So Bruins, they're going to have to find some way to stop Nicely, whether that's stacking up a box, like we said, versus Fairfax. I mentioned, that's probably something they would want to do. Maybe that's something they could go back to again versus this Madison team. And, again, facing Nicely, who's higher-end player. How will they adjust to facing him? It'll be interesting to see how they adjust to facing a guy like Nicely, and how they're the plan that they're going to have to stop him. And even the games the Bruins did win with, facing teams that had really good run games, like West Springfield with Mark Anthony White, like Fairfax again with Maltese, even if they were still kind of, maybe fatigued from playing all the games in those days. But they still looked pretty sharp. So, certainly the Bruins maybe there could have done a little bit better too. They did good enough, but you can't do good enough. You have to be really good to stop a running game like Madison. So we'll see, how they kind of patch up their holes and, See how that goes. And then for the offense, I think the Bruins, they'll need to get it going right away. Easier said than done for many teams, especially Lake Braddock's offense with all the weapons they have. I'm going to say this right now. The Bruins probably have a better offense than the Warhawks do. Warhawks, they have Nicely, of course, at running back, who's a Power 5 guy. They have Cale Yates at quarterback, who can do some pretty good things for him. He's mobile. He has a nice arm that his receivers can attend to. His offensive line is pretty good. They got a couple of All-State guys coming back from last year's team, Ari Rosenberg and Teddy Lewis, who've been really good for him again this year. So maybe they probably have the advantage, in the running game, because I think, Nicely is probably better than Holmes and Bordeaux. Bordeaux also, I know, had a really good game versus Fairfax last time, over 100 yards, touchdown. He scored the first score for the Bruins in that Fairfax team as well. Of course, another shout out to him. And, the Bruin, and the thing with Madison, that Bruin has and that the Warhawks lack is the receiving game. They don't really have a lot of good receivers. Last year, of course, they had Cordy Yates, but they don't have him anymore. That's Cale's older brother, who's now at, I believe he's at Elon now, if I'm not mistaken. But, the Warhawks have really just been using Nicely all year, and, that's probably why you've seen them shift Nicely at receiver at time to make up for the lack of receiving depth that they have and top-end guys in their receiving core that they can go to, because Nicely, of course, he's really good in the open field when he gets out. So a lot of speed, can make big plays happen. Great on special teams, too. Dangerous returner. He was an all-state punt returner and kick returner, I believe, last year. So, watch out for him on special teams as well. Again, it's easier said than done for their offense. Bruins have more of a receiving options. Hibner, Holleen, and Kai Austin also have a decent O-line, too. Madison's O-line might be a bit better, too. So maybe I would say the running game be O-line, but I think quarterback, I think Ty Jackson does top Cale Yates. I think the receiving does. I think more areas than not. Bruins are more well-rounded than Madison's offense is. They're more so run. Bruins can receive. They can run at you. They can do a lot more things. They're a lot more, more of a Swiss Army knife, I would say, with her offensive game. But it's still very interesting to play against a Madison defense. This is a Madison defense that's, not the level that Fairfax and West Springfield was. This is a Madison defense that's much better than both those teams and a lot of the other teams that they faced this year. So again, they're expected, they've seen them early, but still it's going to be interesting to see how they perform against them. And with that being said, this is a game where the Bruins really need to use Jackson's arm early. They need to be aggressive. They need to score points and put up points against that very good Madison defense. Figure out ways to go for it all and really get, guys like Austin, Hibner, Holleen, or one-year speedy receivers, one of those guys, whoever it is, I don't care. Give them the best chance to keep up with that offense led by Nicely. Of course, we talked about them, how they're, kind of maybe more one-dimensional than the Bruins are. But again, Nicely will do damage to you. He's a Power 5 guy, and with the Bruins run stopping, with how much they've struggled with that this year, I don't know how much you'll be able to keep up with them. You have, this is a Madison team, with their defense, with Nicely, you have to get early lead. You cannot take chances. And if you can't take your chance and you cannot succeed on them, you do not score. You have to go for it early. You have to get the big ball out. And, with Madison, and they score, how good their defense is, it'll make you feel like you're down by much more than a score. That's why, you have Jackson give you good points, give you quick momentum, good momentum too, so you can get out to the lead early. So if it happens, so my opinion, Bruins should be doing that too. Again, because this is, Madison team, a lot better than West Springfield and Fairfax. It's going to be a big challenge for them. I think they, overall, I do think the Bruins will perform better. I don't think it's going to be as, feeling one-sided as it was in week 2 when the Bruins face them at home. It's going to be tougher when the Bruins are on the road. They don't have the advantage of facing them at home. So I think, that's another thing Bruins are going to have to handle is, a pressure play on the road in front of the, playing at the opposing stadium. But again, Bruins have to find a way to show up. And then also, this is another thing that coming out to bite the Bruins in a butt a lot. Cut back on the fumbles. We saw that a couple times last game. If, in Fairfax capitalizing, they kind of went away for a couple games, but it's been a problem in a lot of late games down the stretch, especially at the end of the season. Something you can't afford. Again, talk about how aggressive that Madison defense is and how much they'll hurt you offensively. They will get it back. They can make some big plays defensively. They can take the end zone. They'll get a return, touchdown. They'll get a pick six on you. You can't mess around with them. Madison team that is very dangerous. Probably, I would say, they're probably, to me, a top three, and some even have them as the best team in all of Northern Virginia. Braddock's up there too, but Madison overall has been more dominant, and Braddock is this year. But like Braddock, if a run game, they can't be fumbling the ball. Stop with the turnovers. And I do think there will be a bit of balance. I mentioned you're going to have to air it out a lot and be aggressive. But I think of course you're going to have to keep balance. Of course, you're not going to want to be too predictable versus the Warhawks defense. Which will cause some problems if they do so. So we're probably going to have to blend in a little bit of that run game with Bordeaux, with Peyton Holmes. Again, I know on all hitches I mentioned maybe put Holmes in at receiver. Something I don't hate either. I think, having him a receiver could definitely help him out too. Another speedy guy. Now, I know he's not the height of Austin or someone like Halloween or Hibner. I don't think he's exactly 6 feet tall. I think he's around 5'9". But again, he can still be a big playmaker for you downfield. Maybe change up his size to throw the Madison secondary off. It's really good if TJ George, Henry Maiden, guys like that who, make a lot of picks, get really good coverage on you, make it hard for them. So overall, that's what the Bruins should be doing against Madison. We don't have any mailbag questions, looks like, today. It seems like we are going to be wrapping up the show here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you turn on notifications. Make sure you share and stay around and stay tuned for every day for more episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Adam Hazara Show today. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day, everybody.